They left me outside. Not for a minute. Not by mistake. They shut the door, turned the lock, and let the cold keep me company. I remember the sound of laughter on the other side of the glass, high, bright, careless, while the snow clung to my coat like ice pins. My breath fogged the window, but no one looked. I was a shadow on the porch, a ghost at my own family's Christmas. The wreath above me smelled of pine and cinnamon, and it mocked me. So did the twinkling lights. My name is Joe Peterson. I am 71 years old, and I have lived in the same town of Mapleford, Pennsylvania, my whole life. Everyone here knows me as the lady who bakes pies for church, who sews quilts for the school raffle. But to my family, to my grandchildren, I was something else entirely last year. An inconvenience. A coat rack with a pulse. A burden they decided to forget. It was Christmas Eve. I arrived early, arms full of presents I had wrapped with shaky fingers, ribbons crooked but hearts tied inside. My late husband used to call me the glue. The one who held the family together, even when no one deserved holding. I believed that. Foolish woman. The house belonged to my eldest granddaughter, Ashley. Modern, all white walls and chrome fixtures, the kind that smells more of bleach than of home. She greeted me with a smile that was too tight, the kind that warns you not to stay long. "Grandma, you're here," she said, her voice syrupy, her eyes already darting to the kitchen where her friends were sipping mulled wine. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. Inside, the tree was tall, glittering with ornaments I didn't recognize. No hand-painted pine cones, no paper snowflakes, no fingerprints of family. Just glossy baubles bought in bulk. My gifts looked small beneath it, wrapped in paper from the dollar store. But they were mine, bought from my pension, chosen with care. The room buzzed with chatter. My grandsons argued over a new game console, their voices loud, greedy. Ashley's husband poured champagne into crystal flutes. Not a single one offered me a chair. So I stood. I stood with my bag at my feet, my coat still on, and watched my own blood ignore me. It grew late. Snow piled thick against the porch. I felt the chill even from inside, but no one noticed. They cut the ham without asking if I'd like a slice. They toasted without calling my name. They passed gifts without placing one in my lap. Then came the moment. Small, cruel, final. "Grandma, why don't you get some air?" Ashley's voice carried a polite edge, but her hand on my elbow was firm. She led me toward the door, opened it wide, and smiled as if she were doing me a favor. "It's crowded in here. You'll be more comfortable." Before I could answer, she shut the door. I heard the lock slide. I stood in the snow, my arms bare now, the gifts I had brought still under their tree. I knocked once softly, then again, harder. Laughter rose inside, louder, drowning me out. My fingers numbed. My breath came out in clouds. I pressed my forehead to the glass, but all I saw were their faces glowing in warm light, framed in the joy they had stolen from me. I stayed there for hours. Maybe it was minutes. Time freezes when your own family abandons you. The church bells struck midnight, and the carols rang out across Mapleford. Inside, they sang too, off-key, careless, alive. I listened until my knees gave out and I sank onto the frozen porch like an old coat no one bothered to hang. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Ashley. It was her youngest, a girl of 12, cheeks pink from laughter. She gasped when she saw me. "Grandma? You're still out here." Her voice trembled with confusion, not guilt. "Not yet." Behind her, I saw Ashley frown, saw the quick flash of irritation. "She's fine. She likes the cold." I didn't answer. I didn't step back inside. I rose slowly, brushed the snow from my coat, and walked away. They didn't follow. I made it home on foot. 2 miles through the dark, my bones aching, my chest tight. The stars above me were sharp, cruel witnesses. When I reached my small house on Willow Street, the heater groaned to life, the only sound that welcomed me. I sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, and stared at the gifts I had planned to give but never could. That night, I made a vow. Not out loud. Not on paper. Just deep inside, where vows matter most. Next year, I thought. Next Christmas. I would return. I would give them everything they wanted, the warmth, the feast, the gifts, the perfect night. I would smile. I would serve. I would host. And when they finally believed the lie of my forgiveness, when they sat bloated and content beneath twinkling lights, I would take from each of them the one thing they prized above all else. Not with fire. Not with fury. But with precision. Because revenge, like Christmas, is best when it's carefully wrapped and delivered at the right time. And I had 12 months to plan. They thought I would forget. That's the beauty of arrogance. It makes people blind. They never once imagined I'd remember every word, every gesture, every frozen breath outside that locked door. They pictured me shrinking into silence, an old woman knitting herself into the wallpaper. They didn't know me at all. I started small, quiet, like frost spreading across a window pane, unnoticed at first, but steady, deliberate. January in Mapleford is brutal. The snow turns gray, the streets crunch under boots, and the wind slices your face like glass. I spent most days by the fire with a notebook and pen. I listed names. Ashley, Mark, Brian, little Stephanie. Each grandchild, each adult, every branch that had sat around that tree without offering me a chair. Beside their names, I wrote one word: want. Ashley wanted status. Her Instagram posts were her gospel, every holiday staged like a magazine spread. She lived for followers, for likes, for the illusion that her family was picture perfect. Mark, my middle grandson, wanted money. He'd never held a steady job. His new car still smelled of leather, but I knew the payments were 3 months behind. Brian, the youngest, wanted freedom. Always planning trips, always asking for loans, never once paying them back. And Stephanie, sweet-faced, 12 going on 20, wanted attention. Her phone was glued to her hand, her life lived through a lens. She didn't know it yet, but she craved the audience more than love. Each of them had something precious. And that meant each of them had something I could take. By February, I had begun to gather. Not things, information. I visited the library, the county office, even the bank. People underestimate how invisible an old woman can be. Clerks talk freely when they think you're harmless. I smiled. I asked polite questions. I left with answers they never dreamed I would want. Ashley's mortgage. Mark's unpaid debts. Brian's travel bookings. Stephanie's school passwords, posted carelessly on sticky notes stuck to Ashley's fridge when I stopped by with cookies in March. Every scrap of knowledge slipped into a folder I labeled recipes. No one would ever open it but me. Spring came. Maple trees bloomed, and Mapleford smelled of damp earth and thawing regret. At the church picnic, Ashley bragged about hosting Christmas again. "We'll make it bigger this year," she laughed. "Grandma will love it." They smiled at me then, the way people smile at stray dogs, gentle, fake, and full of condescension. I nodded, my lips thin, my heart steady. "Yes," I said softly. "I'd love that." By June, I had tested my reach. A small experiment. I sent Ashley a package, an anonymous box filled with red ribbons and a single card. "The best gifts are the ones we never see coming." She posted it on Instagram, puzzled but charmed. "Secret admirer," she typed with a winking emoji. Her friends cooed in the comments. Not one of them guessed the handwriting. By late summer, the plan had taken shape. I would give them everything they thought they wanted. A feast, a celebration, gifts wrapped in gold and silver. A Christmas to remember. But beneath each ribbon, I would hide the truth. The price of betrayal. The key was patience. Let them relax. Let them believe they had been forgiven. Revenge must never feel like revenge until the blade is already in. Autumn fell. Leaves turned to fire, then to ash. The chill crept back into the air, sharp with the scent of smoke from chimneys. I sat at my kitchen table, sewing stockings by hand. Each one with their names stitched in red. Ashley. Mark. Brian. Stephanie. A set of 4, perfect and smiling. And one more. Mine. Because this year, I would not wait outside the door. I would open it myself. By November, invitations had been sent. Written in my neatest cursive, scented with cinnamon oil, tied with twine. Christmas Eve at Grandma Joe's. A tradition restored. They replied quickly. Of course they would come. Of course they were excited. Of course they loved me. Words typed quickly, thoughtlessly, without weight. They didn't see what I saw. I saw the door slamming in my face. I saw the snow clinging to my coat. I saw the candle burning on their table while I froze outside. And I knew, this year, the door would still close. But this time, it would close behind them. Because Christmas is a season of giving. And I was ready to give them exactly what they deserved. Snow fell like powdered sugar over Mapleford, soft at first, then heavy, smothering the town in silence. Christmas Eve had arrived, exactly 1 year after they left me shivering on Ashley's porch. But this time, the door was mine to open. I stood in my kitchen that afternoon, the smell of cinnamon and roasted ham filling the air. My small house on Willow Street had been transformed. Garland draped over the banister, candles flickered in every window, stockings hung perfectly along the mantel. It looked warm, inviting, almost too perfect. That was the point. At 5 o'clock sharp, headlights cut across the snow. A car door slammed. Then another. Laughter carried through the night air. I smoothed my apron, tightened my grip on the doorknob, and opened before they could knock. Grandma! Stephanie shrieked, barreling toward me, phone already raised. She wanted a selfie at the doorway, our faces glowing in the light. I smiled, leaned in, let her capture the moment. The flash caught the sparkle in my eyes, but not the steel beneath. Ashley followed, her fur-collared coat brushing against me as she kissed the air by my cheek. This looks lovely, she said, scanning the decorations like a critic judging a stage set. She wanted to be impressed. I made sure she was. Mark trailed behind, tugging at his too-tight tie, his phone buzzing in his hand. Wi-Fi password, Grandma, he asked before his coat was even off. I gave it to him sweetly. He didn't notice the router blinking in the corner, already filtering every keystroke. Brian strolled in last, tossing his keys into the candy dish by the door as if he owned the place. He carried a travel brochure sticking out of his pocket. Folly. He would never see it. They gathered in the living room, eyes darting from the tree to the gifts stacked high beneath it. Gold paper. Silver ribbons. My handwriting neat on every tag. Their names gleamed back at them. Wow, Grandma, Ashley said, her voice sugary, her eyes calculating. You really went all out this year. I poured champagne into crystal flutes I had rented for the occasion. Only the best for my family, I said softly. They raised glasses. They toasted to forgiveness and fresh starts. No one mentioned last year. Not out loud. But I could see it in their eyes, the flicker of discomfort when the church bells rang 6 o'clock, the faint shadow of memory in the glow of the tree. Dinner was a performance, and I was the conductor. Ham glazed with honey. Potatoes whipped with cream. Rolls warm from the oven. Every plate filled, every mouth fed. Laughter rose. They began to believe. I leaned back in my chair, watching them devour what I had given. Ashley snapped photos of the spread for her followers. Mark scrolled through bank apps under the table, pretending no one noticed. Brian bragged about his trip, his words dripping with entitlement. Stephanie recorded it all, her voice high with joy, already planning what to post. I let them. Because every bite, every sip, every careless word was a step closer to the truth. When the plates were cleared, I brought out the stockings. 4 red socks stitched with their names. Ashley. Mark. Brian. Stephanie. Tradition, I said, handing them out. They laughed. They dug inside eagerly. And one by one, their faces shifted. Ashley pulled out a photograph. Not of family. Not of love. A copy of her foreclosure notice, stamped in bold red ink. Past due. Mark found a stack of receipts, payday loans in his name, interest climbing like ivy. He froze, his glass slipping from his hand. Brian pulled a single boarding pass. His Bali trip. Cancelled. Refund already processed into an account he couldn't touch. And Stephanie. Sweet Stephanie. She reached in with trembling fingers and pulled out a printed packet of her private messages, every secret she had ever sent to her friends. Every cruel word, every hidden confession, now neatly bound in a bow. The room fell silent. I sipped my wine. Do you like your gifts? Ashley's lips parted, her face pale. Where? How did you? Mark shoved back his chair, his voice rising. This isn't funny, Grandma. This is sick. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. Grandma, please. I set my glass down carefully, the stem ringing softly against the wood. 1 year ago, you left me out in the snow. Tonight, I welcomed you into the fire. I gave you food, drink, warmth. And then, just like you did to me, I showed you how it feels to be left with nothing. The tree lights flickered. The clock struck 7. Outside, the snow thickened, muffling the world in silence. Inside, my grandchildren stared at me, not with love, not with pity, but with the dawning horror of children who had finally realized their grandmother still had teeth. And the night had only just begun. The silence after my words was thick enough to choke on. Only the faint hiss of the radiator and the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the room. Their eyes darted between one another as though they could pass the blame like a plate of spoiled meat. Ashley broke first. Of course she did. Her voice trembled, though she tried to keep it steady. This is invasion of privacy. Illegal. You can't. Can't what? I cut in, my tone sharper than the knife I'd just used to carve the ham. Can't remind you of what you already know? These papers didn't appear out of thin air. They're yours. You made them. You signed them. You sent them. You earned every word, every debt, every secret. Mark shoved his chair back, the legs scraping across the hardwood. He looked ready to storm out, but when he grabbed the doorknob, it didn't turn. His head whipped toward me, panic flashing in his eyes. Old locks, I said calmly, sipping my wine. They stick in the winter. Sit down, Mark. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he sat. Stephanie's lower lip quivered. Why are you doing this, Grandma? We're family. Family, I repeated, tasting the word like vinegar on my tongue. Is that what you called me last year? When you shut the door? When you laughed while I froze outside like a stray dog? No one answered. Brian slammed his boarding pass on the table. Fine. You've made your point. Congratulations. But this ends now. On the contrary, I said. This is just the first course. I rose from my chair and moved to the mantel. 4 stockings still hung there, empty now. But above them was the 5th one. Mine. I took it down slowly, almost reverently, and reached inside. One by one, I laid envelopes on the table. Each sealed, each thick with paper. Their names written in bold letters. Ashley. Mark. Brian. Stephanie. What's this? Ashley asked, her voice breaking. Choices, I said. Each of you will open yours before the night is over. Inside, you'll find exactly what you value most. Or perhaps what you fear most. Depends on how honest you've been with yourselves. Mark swore under his breath. This is insane. I leaned closer, my voice low, deliberate. No, Mark. Insane would have been walking away. Insane would have been forgiving you. This, I tapped the envelopes with one finger. This is clarity. Ashley reached for hers, but I caught her wrist. My grip was surprisingly strong for 71. Not yet. Dessert first. I carried the plates into the dining room, a rich chocolate cake, iced white like snow, each slice crowned with a sugared cranberry. They devoured it, though tension made their forks clumsy. Sweetness still tempted them, even as the truth soured their mouths. When the plates were cleared, I nodded. Now, open them. Ashley tore hers first, hands shaking. Inside was a printed email thread. Not just foreclosure notices, but proof of the forged signatures she had used on loan applications. Her face drained of color. "Where did you?" "From your own desktop," I said smoothly. "Your password was the name of your dog." "Very clever." Mark's envelope revealed bank statements, gambling sites. Thousands gone. He cursed loudly, slamming the papers shut. Brian unfolded his and found copies of his travel itinerary, along with confirmation that his ticket had been resold, the funds rerouted to pay off one of Mark's debts. His eyes blazed. "You had no right." Stephanie was last. She pulled out a glossy stack of screenshots. Her Instagram drafts. Photos never posted. Ones she'd taken in the mirror, posing too grown for her age. She went pale, clutching them to her chest. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Grandma, please, don't show anyone." I watched them crumble one by one, their laughter gone, their arrogance stripped. For the first time in years, they were silent enough to hear me. "You call me weak. You call me old. You think shutting a door can erase me. But tonight, I'm the one holding the key. And I won't waste this lesson." The grandfather clock chimed 9. Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing Mapleford in white. Inside, the heat of the fire made the room stifling. Sweat glistened on their foreheads. They looked trapped not by locks, not by walls, but by the truth staring back at them in black ink. And I wasn't finished. I leaned back, folded my hands, and let the words settle. "You wanted Christmas with Grandma. And you've got it. But before midnight, each of you will give me something. Not apologies. Not excuses. Something real. Something that hurts. Or else." I tapped the envelopes again. "Or else these gifts won't stay in this room." The flames in the fireplace crackled louder. My grandchildren sat frozen, as if waiting for a storm to break. They didn't realize it already had. The fire popped, sending a small spark up the chimney. None of them moved. They sat like statues, each clutching their envelope, each trying to swallow the weight of what I'd laid before them. "You have until midnight," I said. "You will give me what you value most. Or I will give these papers to someone who values them more than you do." Ashley's voice cracked first. "You wouldn't dare." I smiled, calm as a winter lake. "Dare? Ashley, I already did. The copies are in a box at my lawyer's office. I simply hold the key. What I decide tonight determines where that key turns." Mark leaned forward, fists on the table. "This is blackmail." "No," I said softly. "This is Christmas." They didn't laugh. Brian muttered under his breath, "You've lost it." His words were sharp, but his eyes betrayed him, fear simmering beneath the arrogance. Stephanie clutched her stack of papers tighter. "Please, Grandma. Please don't ruin me." Her voice was a whisper, small, trembling. "Then don't ruin yourself," I replied. "Choose better." The clock ticked toward 10. Their faces grew paler with every minute. Finally, Ashley snapped. She shoved back her chair and stormed toward the hallway. I let her go. I knew where she'd end up. Moments later, she returned with something clutched in her hand, a sleek phone, wrapped in a glittering case. She slammed it onto the table. "This is what you want, isn't it?" she hissed. "Proof. Control. You can have it. Take my phone." I picked it up slowly, turned it over, then set it back down. "That's not what I asked for." "What do you want then?" she spat. "I want the truth," I said coldly. "I want you to stand here, in front of your brothers and your sister, and admit what you did to keep your house standing. Every forged line. Every lie. Speak it." Ashley's jaw tightened. "No." "Then the foreclosure papers go public," I said. "Your husband. Your friends. Your followers. All of them will know." Her face twisted. "You wouldn't. Try me." Her hand trembled. Tears filled her eyes. "Fine," she whispered. And then louder, breaking into sobs. "I forged the signatures. I did it because I was drowning. I thought no one would know. I just wanted to keep what was mine." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Mine." I leaned back, satisfied. "Good. That's your gift." Honesty. Something you've never given me. Ashley collapsed into her chair, covering her face. Mark slammed his fist against the table. This is madness. We're not playing your twisted game. Oh, but you are, I said, my tone sharp enough to cut. Because the only thing worse than playing is losing. The clock ticked louder. 11. The storm outside howled against the windows. Brian was next. He threw his canceled boarding pass into the fire. The flames swallowed it in seconds. There. Happy? I don't care. I'll find another way. I watched the ashes curl. Not enough. What else do you want? He snapped. Your passport. His head shot up. No. Yes, I said firmly. If you value freedom so much, then sacrifice it. Hand me the one thing that lets you run. Brian stared at me, rage burning in his eyes. Then he pulled his wallet from his pocket, yanked out the navy blue booklet, and threw it at me. You're insane, he muttered. I tucked it neatly into my apron pocket. And you're grounded. At last. Mark shifted uneasily. He knew his turn was coming. You're gambling, I said, my eyes locking onto him. I want your confession too. Every dollar you stole. Every lie you fed your wife. Say it. Out loud. Mark's face reddened. He stood, towering over me, his voice rising. You're destroying this family. No, I said. You did that long before I lifted a finger. His eyes darted to the others. Ashley sobbing quietly, Brian glaring, Stephanie shaking. He looked cornered. Trapped. Finally, he sank back into his chair and whispered, I gambled it all. The rent money. The savings. Even the loan Dad left me. It's gone. His voice cracked. I lost everything. The words hung heavy in the air. And then only Stephanie remained. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes swollen. She looked at me like a child again. Grandma, please. Don't make me. You wanted the spotlight, I said gently. Now shine in it. She shook her head. They'll hate me. They already do, I whispered. But the truth might save you. Lies won't. Her hands shook as she stood. She clutched the stack of printouts, her voice trembling. I wrote things online. Mean things. To people at school. To my friends. Even to Mom. She sobbed. I pretended to be perfect, but I wasn't. I was cruel. No one spoke. The fire hissed. The clock chimed 11:30. I rose, steady, calm. And now you know, each of you, what it feels like to lose what you thought was safe. Their faces were pale, hollow. They were no longer laughing grandchildren, no longer smug heirs to a legacy they hadn't earned. They were stripped bare, trembling in the glow of a Christmas tree that suddenly looked like a funeral pyre. And I wasn't done yet. Before midnight, I said softly, you will give me one last thing. The most precious thing you own. Place it under the tree. If you don't, I tapped the envelopes. The world will open them for me. I turned and left the room, letting the fire crackle in my wake. Behind me, the silence was worse than screams. The storm outside rattled the windows as though the night itself wanted to witness what came next. I sat in the parlor with my cup of tea, calm, steady, listening to the shuffle of feet in the dining room. They thought I couldn't hear, but every whisper carried. She's bluffing, Brian muttered. Then why is she holding my foreclosure papers? Ashley snapped. Mark hissed, she won't really go public. She's our grandmother. And then Stephanie, voice thin and trembling, you don't know her at all. They were right. They didn't. At 11:30, I called them back into the living room. The tree glowed, ornaments shining like watchful eyes. The stockings above the fire swayed slightly in the draft. I pointed to the space beneath the branches. Your most precious possession, I said. Place it here. One by one. Ashley stepped forward first. Her heels clicked against the hardwood like the beat of a guilty heart. She pulled something from her purse, a slim velvet box. Inside gleamed her engagement ring, a diamond as cold and bright as the snow outside. She knelt, trembling, and set it under the tree. Happy now, she whispered. I sipped my tea. Not yet. Mark was next. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulling out a small silver watch. His father's. My husband's. The one I'd given Harold on their 20th anniversary. My breath caught, but I kept my face stone. He laid it down reluctantly. It's all I've got left worth anything. I looked him in the eye. And yet you wagered it in poker once. Don't deny it, I've seen the IOU. His face flushed crimson. He said nothing. Brian swaggered forward, trying to keep the mask of defiance. From his wallet, he drew out a folded airline voucher, first class, non-refundable. Paris this time. He tossed it under the tree like garbage. Happy? You've clipped my wings. Congratulations. Wings. I echoed. No, Brian. Those weren't wings. They were chains. And I just cut them. Finally, Stephanie. She stood frozen, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I didn't have to ask. I already knew. Put it down, I said gently. Her fingers shook as she lowered it to the floor, screen still glowing with a half-written message. She didn't even look back when she placed it beneath the tree. Tears rolled freely now, catching the lights like shattered glass. The four of them stood in a row, stripped of their ornaments, hollow as the empty stockings above the fire. I let the silence sit until it pressed against their lungs. Then I rose. You took my dignity last year, I said softly. You left me in the snow. Tonight, I took something from each of you. Not your trinkets, not your luxuries, but the truth you worshipped. Status. Wealth. Escape. Attention. All gone. Do you feel the cold now? Do you? Ashley sobbed openly, mascara streaking her cheeks. Mark clenched his fists, knuckles white. Brian glared daggers at me, jaw tight. Stephanie shook like a leaf, whispering, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I leaned closer. Sorry won't warm frozen bones. Sorry won't undo laughter behind locked doors. Sorry won't keep you safe when the truth knocks. The clock struck midnight. Its chime echoed like a church bell calling the guilty to confess. I reached under the tree, gathered their treasures into my hands, and placed them carefully back in their arms. You may keep them, I said. Their eyes widened in shock. But know this, you will never hold them the same way again. Because you'll remember tonight. You'll remember that I could have destroyed you. And I chose not to. For now. Mark stammered, for now. I smiled, thin, sharp, final. You think Christmas comes once a year. But punishment, my dears, it can come any day I choose. The fire roared louder as if to punctuate my words. They stood frozen, clutching their possessions like life rafts, and for the first time, I saw it real fear. Not of age. Not of weakness. Of me. And that was the most precious gift of all. The fire had burned low, only embers now, red and glowing like watchful eyes in the grate. My grandchildren clutched their reclaimed treasures in silence. Not one dared to sit. They hovered near the tree, pale and restless, like children waiting for punishment that hadn't yet been named. I let the quiet stretch until it ached. Then I said, you think it's over. That giving me your confessions, your possessions, is enough. But there's one more lesson you owe. The hardest one. Their eyes darted between each other. Ashley's ring glittered in her trembling hand. Mark's knuckles whitened around the watch. Brian's voucher stuck out of his jacket pocket like a mocking tongue. Stephanie's phone buzzed once, muted, ignored. What lesson? Mark demanded, his voice hoarse. Loyalty, I said. True loyalty reveals itself when it costs something. Tonight, each of you will prove where your loyalty lies. With me. Or with each other. Ashley shook her head. You can't pit us against each other like this. I stepped closer, my shadow falling long across the rug. I don't have to. You'll do it yourselves. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out 4 sealed cards. Plain white, no names, only wax seals pressed in red. I laid them on the table one by one, like laying down weapons. Inside each card, I said, is a single truth. Something one of your siblings or cousins doesn't want you to know. Something I've held back. You can open your own, or open someone else's. But if you open someone else's, You must read it aloud." The room chilled, despite the embers. Mark barked a bitter laugh. "This is insane." Brian sneered. "We don't have to play." "Don't you?" I tilted my head. "Then why are your hands already itching?" Ashley's fingers twitched toward the cards. Stephanie whispered, "Please, Grandma, don't make us." "I don't make monsters," I said flatly. "I reveal them." The clock struck 12:30. A faint draft whistled through the window. Snow hammered harder against the glass. I folded my hands and waited. Ashley moved first. She snatched a card, tore the seal, and read aloud in a trembling voice. Ashley altered the family trust account last spring, naming herself sole beneficiary in the event of Joe's medical incapacity. Her breath caught. "That's a lie," she cried. But her face said otherwise. Mark's eyes flared. You try to cut us out? You think I'm the only one?" she snapped. "You're drowning in debt, Mark. You'd sell this whole house for poker chips if Grandma let you." Mark grabbed a card next. He ripped it open with shaking hands. Mark borrowed $12,000 from Ashley last year and never paid it back. He promised her dad's watch as collateral. The room froze. His hand tightened around the silver watch. Ashley lunged for it, screaming, "You still have it. You lying thief." Brian laughed coldly. "Pathetic." I sipped my tea, watching the cracks widen. Brian snatched his card next, his grin thin and sharp. He read aloud. Brian attempted to sell the lake cabin without family permission. The offer fell through only because the buyer discovered his forged signature. Ashley gasped. "The cabin? Dad's cabin." Mark shouted, "You snake." Brian shrugged, unbothered. "At least I tried to get something. Unlike you two parasites." Stephanie whimpered. Her small hands hovered over the last card. I could see her lips moving, whispering, "Don't open it. Don't open it." But she did. Her voice cracked as she read. Stephanie has been stealing from Ashley's purse for months. Small bills. Coins. Makeup. She also used Ashley's credit card twice for online shopping. Ashley's scream rattled the windows. "You little thief." She lunged, grabbing Stephanie's arm. The girl shrieked, dropping her phone. It skittered across the floor, screen cracking on the hearthstone. Mark grabbed Ashley to pull her back. Brian pushed Mark aside. In seconds, the room exploded into chaos. Accusations, insults, threats, flying like daggers. My grandchildren, the ones who once left me to freeze outside in silence, now tearing each other apart in my living room. And I sat in my chair, calm, steady, watching the storm I'd summoned. The clock struck 1. The tree lights flickered once, then went out, plunging the room into half-dark. Their voices rose higher, frantic, animal. And then I spoke. Low. Sharp. Enough to slice through every scream. "Look at you." They froze, panting, wild-eyed, still clutching their exposed sins. "You locked me out last Christmas. Tonight, I locked you in. And now you finally see yourselves the way I've always seen you. Not as children. Not as heirs. But as scavengers, tearing flesh from bone the second you smell blood." Silence fell heavier than the snow outside. "Before this night is over," I whispered, "I will decide which of you deserves to leave with anything at all." Their faces drained of color. And for the first time since that snowy porch a year ago, I felt warm. The living room reeked of smoke and fear. The tree loomed in shadow, its ornaments catching faint sparks from the dying fire. My grandchildren stood apart now, no longer a family, only enemies bound by blood and betrayal. Ashley clutched her ring like a shield. Mark kept glancing at the watch, as if it were the last thing tethering him to dignity. Brian shoved his hands deep into his pockets, eyes darting toward the locked door. And Stephanie, poor trembling Stephanie, wiped her face with her sleeve, her cracked phone lying dead on the hearth. I rose slowly from my chair. My knees ached, but my back was straight. "Enough," I said. My voice cut through the room sharper than any blade. They froze. "1 year ago, you left me in the snow. I begged without words, and you laughed. Tonight, I begged nothing. And still, you showed me who you are. Ashley whispered, "We were wrong. We've admitted it. What more do you want?" I walked to the mantel, pulled down my own stocking, the fifth one, stitched with Joe in crimson thread. From inside, I drew a single envelope. Heavy, thick, sealed with black wax. "This," I said, holding it up, "is my will. Updated 2 weeks ago." Their eyes locked on it, greed flickering even through their terror. Mark's voice cracked. "Grandma, please, we can make this right." "We can." "You can do nothing," I said flatly. "Because tonight I watched you tear each other apart over scraps of paper. You proved you're not heirs. You're scavengers. And scavengers inherit nothing." I opened the envelope slowly. For pairs of eyes widened as I pulled the papers free. "Everything you thought was yours, the house, the land, the savings, it's gone. Signed over. Irrevocable." "To who?" Ashley gasped. I smiled, cold as the snowstorm outside. "To no one you'll ever know. To strangers. To charities. To people who never once turned a lock against me." The words sank like stones. Mark's mouth opened, then shut. Brian swore under his breath. Stephanie whimpered. "You still have your little trinkets," I said, nodding to their hands. "Your ring, your watch, your vouchers, your phone. Keep them. Cling to them. Because that's all you'll ever have from me." Ashley lunged forward suddenly, desperate. "You can't do this. We're your blood." I stepped back, steady. Blood means nothing when it runs cold. The clock struck 2. I crossed the room to the front door. Slowly, deliberately, I turned the lock. The metal clicked loud in the silence. "You may leave now," I said, pulling the door open. The blizzard outside howled into the room, flurries swirling across the rug. "Take your precious things and step into the night. But know this, Christmas will never be yours again. Not while I'm still breathing." They hesitated, shivering in fear more than cold. Then, one by one, they stepped past me into the storm. Ashley, her ring clutched to her chest. Mark, gripping the watch he'd never deserve. Brian, scowling, his voucher crumpled in his fist. Stephanie, crying softly, her dead phone tucked against her heart. They disappeared into the snow, swallowed by the darkness. I shut the door behind them. Locked it. Bolted it. The storm outside roared, but inside, the silence was warm, thick, complete. I poured myself a final glass of wine, sat before the fire, and whispered to the empty room. "They left me out in the cold once. Now I've left them there forever." I raised my glass to the flames. "Merry Christmas." And that was the end.